G'day and welcome to Talking Aussie Farming. I'm your host, Jono Weinstock, where we educate and inspire people around the world about agriculture in Australia. And today I'm joined by a very special guest, Simone Kain from Penola, South Australia. Simone's an award-winning writer, content producer, mother of three, possibly four, and look out, Steve Irwin, Crocodile Dundee. We've got George the farmer in town with us today. Simone, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. What an intro.
I wonder if you've ever been compared to Crocodile Dundee or Steve Irwin before, but...
No, I haven't. But I've sort of been aspiring to sort of get up there near the Wiggles or Bluey, but, Crocodile Dundee's quite good too.
Well, it's no mean feat. I mean, you were recently on the Today Show promoting, your adventures heading over to the US, which we'll get onto later, which is very impressive. It's not easy to crack any international market with your kangaroo character.
Kangaroo cornfield.
On an amazing journey with maize spelt M-A-I-Z-E. I did find that, which was kind of quirky.
Mm-hmm.
But no, Simone, you've built an impressive platform and business helping inspire and educate the youth of Australia. And I guess our show's, not too dissimilar. We're at early days. You've been doing this probably a decade now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, keen to, I guess, understand what inspired you and where were the gaps in this lack of education with youth about Australian farming?
Yeah, well, it sort of started off really as more of an inspirational character than an educational character. So I grew up on a farm, I'm married to a farmer, and I've got three sons, not four, although George the farmer is probably my fourth son. But when my eldest son George was 2, I couldn't find anything for him that was really explaining the real story of Australian agriculture and from more of a commercial sense. So there was old MacDonald who had a farm and he was old and daggy and collects the eggs and milks a cow by hand, and that's sort of all that's shown that happens on a farm. And at the time I was pregnant with twins, and so I was trying to find something for George to sort of keep him entertained when I became really busy. And I also had a creative agency. So, it just dawned on me that there was this opportunity to create a character that would inspire lots of little farm kids around Australia mainly. And my former business partner at the time and I wanted to get into the app market. And so we decided, we were researching pretty keenly different ideas as to what we could develop to showcase that we could do apps to our clientele, and everything was sort of all ag based that we were coming up with. This is sort of before farm management apps and things like that. Back in 2009, 2012 it was. And then I just had this idea, like, let's put our skills together and create this character called George the farmer and release it as an interactive story app. And I'd always wanted to write a kids book, and my business partner was getting into illustrating at the time, and so together we wrote and illustrated the first story, which was George the farmer plants a wheat crop, and we released that on the iTunes market, and it was regularly in the top 10 apps for education back then. And because it was sort of the inception of the app market, we did receive quite a bit of media attention around what we were doing from both, I guess, ag media, but also education as well. But it wasn't long into writing that first story where I came across some staggering statistics about what kids really don't know about where their food comes from in Australia, which blew me away. So in 2012, there was a survey released that indicated 45% of Australian Year 6 kids didn't identify everyday lunchbox items such as a piece of cheese, a banana or bread as originating from a farm. Well, look, I hope George the farmer's making some impact there, but there hasn't been another survey like that released since in Australia since 2012. So it would be really interesting to see the results of another one. But it is a global problem. Yeah, in the US, 16 million adults believe that chocolate milk comes from brown cows, which, although it sounds quite funny, it just proves there is this massive disconnect. And if we really want to, make a difference with educating kids about where their food and fibre comes from, because they're our future decision makers, our future voters and our future consumers, we really need to start educating them from a young age.
I mean, I was in the kitchen yesterday rushing around seeing an empty fridge with a hungry 12-year-old coming home from school. And within 5 minutes, I've ordered Woolies online and it's come within the hour. And I'm like, where does my food come from? It doesn't even come from the supermarket. It comes from the Uber driver. I mean,
Yeah,
there's another layer of further disconnect,
Yeah, and I think
even for adults, let alone the kids. So,
unless we're having those conversations with kids about where food comes from, they don't know because they do see the Woolies or Coles truck, arrive in the yard, or they go to the supermarket and grab a carton of milk. It isn't, there isn't that connection back to the farm necessarily, or the people that work on the farms, or even involved in the ag sector in general, that could be in the city or anywhere, but there just isn't that connection back to them. So that's where I guess the idea for George sort of moved from being this inspirational character to also being this educational character that could hopefully make a difference in the future.
but yeah, I guess what you've done, you've turned the education into entertainment and fun, with a layer and deep levels of creativity, which makes it interesting to hold kids' attention and adults. And now I watched all 3 seasons on ABC iView. I've got the wheat song, the potato song in my head still from last night. Yep. I saw you dancing around, and I wanted to ask you. I saw you did a trip to the Northern Territory and some horticultural farms up there. What was your favourite episode on the 3 seasons? Looks like you and your team had a ball producing those.
Oh, they're heaps of fun. And like we always say to the farmers, you have to get up and do the dances with us. And they're like, oh, no, we're not going to do it. But they always get up and they love it. And they're really proud of it as well. Yeah, but we just, we also went up to Cairns last year and filmed sugarcane. And the year before that we did cotton, which both of those ones aren't on the ABC as yet. I'm not sure if they will acquire them. But all of our videos, there's also a chicken meat one that the ABC didn't acquire because they were a little bit worried about vegans. But that's on our YouTube channel as well. So if you want to watch even more episodes, you can jump onto our YouTube channel. But yeah, I think that's the best part about the whole George the Farmer brand is that it's a whole platform. So we have original music that you can stream on Spotify. We've got our videos on YouTube or ABC iView. We've got our picture storybooks. So there's 14 books currently available now. Last week or 2 weeks ago, I released 8 early learner readers. So they're the little books that I've got on here. You can see they're the little books that kids use when they start school to learn how to read. And we've been getting some really great feedback from kids because generally a lot of little boys often struggle to pick up that love of learning and reading when they start school. They sort of find a lot of the content disengaging. And that's sort of the main target audience for George. They really resonate towards George because they love machinery, they love animals, they love food, they love farming. And so if they can come across George the Farmer content, it gives them that inspiration to start learning and to start reading. And so the new readers that we've picked up, we've been getting some really good feedback already back on those. And we've got 5 baby board books. And then we also have our free curriculum aligned educators resources that teachers use in the classroom. So they're all free for teachers to download and they follow STEM subjects for reception through to Year 4, foundation to Year 4. And so basically teachers can teach the class we're about to release a sugarcane one in a couple of weeks. But, from cotton to sugarcane to forestry, apples, dairy, there's about 14 different free resources on there with tens of, activities on there to do in the classroom. So they can learn all their STEM subjects while they're also learning about where food and fibre comes from in Australia. And so since we've released those, we've helped educate well over 660,000 kids across Australia just through those resources alone. And our videos have reached, well over 1 million views. And we've had a partnership as well. We're always looking for any organisations interested in partnering with us. We've had a partnership that will be going into its 5th year this year with Rabobank, and so they've been supporting book packs to schools across Australia and New Zealand. And so through that book packs to schools promotion, we've delivered almost or nearly close to 10,000 books across Australia into schools and classrooms. And with the lifespan of a book, that equates to well over 1 million children that'll be impacted through food and fibre stories.
That's a massive impact and something to be very proud of, and what an amazing legacy. Is it more nerve-wracking getting up on stage in front of a bunch of 3 to 8 year olds, or speaking to a room full of 1,600 bankers at a Rabobank conference?
No, definitely the 1,600 bankers.
I thought you were brilliant on stage, by the way.
Thanks. Well, I did put a bit of practice into it. I didn't want to look like a total idiot.
Can I talk about sequential learning? You make a few comments about sequential learning and what it means. And from what I gather, after watching your, I think it was the wheat or grain episode, it took me from growing a harvest through to making a pizza. And it really took me step by step, from paddock to plate. So I love the little bit in the kitchen at the end that actually turns it into something productive and practical and fun. And it was late night, and I thought, oh, I'm hungry now. Maybe I should, turning grain into flour and flour into dough and dough into pizza, and don't get too much tomato paste around the crust. You want to keep the crust, And it was brilliant. So you talk me through what sequential learning means, because you've really taken an adult, through a step-by-step process of, the hard yakka of seeding.
Well, I guess the idea is really just to show that whole journey from paddock to plate, really, when we can. And I mean, sometimes we've done a forestry video, and so obviously we can't go into the kitchen with wood, but we show at the end of that one a house that's been built and different products that come from wood. Same with the cotton one. It's basically just trying to show that whole journey so that kids can relate an end product to where it begins. And we do the same thing with our picture storybooks as well. So the picture storybooks, they're basically like a fun story with a few little educational facts woven through there. But then at the back of our books, we also have a Did You Know section, which has all facts about ag across, globally. It's got Australian facts in it as well as international facts. And then if it's a food product, sometimes we've put a recipe in the back as well. So in George the Farmer Egg Enigma, George is trying to cook a chocolate cake for the Penola show, and in the end he has a tie with his nosy neighbour Neville. But in the back of the book, we've got his chocolate cake recipe, and lots of people cook that and send us in messages that it's the best chocolate cake they've ever cooked.
Oh, that's brilliant. There's plenty of nosy Nevilles in, in most farming regions. I'm sure there's some clever characters, and I'm sure you're referencing some homegrown stories and people in your characters and stories.
Yes.
Tell me, how hard is it to get education into a national curriculum, let alone on ABC? I'm guessing there are some challenges, and you've had to jump through a few hoops.
Yeah, it is. It's actually, it's not written into the curriculum, but it's available and aligns to the curriculum for any teachers to use. ABC Education, obviously, they've got the content that we create for the ABC is for ABC Education, so it does have to align to the curriculum. The videos and the resources that we produce, we work in consultation with educational consultants, and they know what they're doing. Prior to that, in my creative agency, so I don't have the creative agency anymore, I focus purely on George the Farmer, but we used to do a lot of work for the Primary Industries Education Foundation Australia. So that's sort of how the idea of sort of making George this whole platform came about, because we were producing paddock to plate videos for PIFA, Primary Industries Education Foundation, and also producing curriculum-aligned resources there. And so I was working with different educational consultants to develop those things. And so after we, released the app, and then we started getting requests for picture storybooks that were actually printed copies, which blew us away because we thought we were being sort of cutting edge with a digital product, but people still wanted the old school picture storybooks. But yeah, we just followed through this journey where we thought, okay, well, next we can create these curriculum-aligned resources to back up the other content that we're already producing. And we started filming a potato video for Regional Development Australia. And so when we were about to produce that, we were like, okay, well, how about we produce a George the Farmer potato video at the same time? And because a lot of the filming was shot, that's actually shot on our farm here out of Penola. Yeah, Farmer Tim leases some of our land, and who appears in the video, and he was happy to get involved in the filming and the videos. And then we went back out to his property where he also grows more potatoes. But yeah, it's just been this natural progression where, I guess, from the skills that we've had in the creative agency, the connections that we've made through different clients as well, we've just sort of been able to organically grow the brand into being this multifaceted platform that does allow us to tell sequential stories.
Yeah, no, it's incredibly clever and easy to follow, and just even as an adult, I think it should be part of the adult curriculum as well. I've got to say, I should offer a prize to anyone who can repeat the 50 varieties of potato in that song. It was like that McDonald's, if you said 2 all beef patty special sauce in under 5 seconds, you got a free Coke or something. Like, that was pretty quirky. And I thought, I bet you get some keen kids memorising all the varieties.
Look, I've heard that song so many times and I still can't remember all of them. So, but I've hung up my boots now. I don't actually get up on the stage and perform anymore. I've got a talented crew that are mainly based in Adelaide that they're all proper singers and actors, and they're not a ring-in like me that has just
you did a great job, but I guess if you're producing stage shows at ag shows and schools around the country, it's it's a full-time gig in itself almost, and hard work on stage. Now, tell me about one of your characters, Dr. Ruby. It was International Women's Day Sunday just passed in March, and I can see you're an advocate, and I love the story about Dr. Ruby and what inspired it and what impact it's having on women in agriculture.
Yeah, well, it was really important to me to showcase, even though it was called George the Farmer after my son, I really wanted to showcase that women make up 50% of the ag workforce. And so George's wife is Dr. Ruby, and she has her PhD because she's a farmer, but she has a PhD in agronomy. And if she features in the stories, often she sort of comes to the rescue with solving a problem. But if Ruby doesn't appear in any of the picture storybooks, generally some other strong female will appear. And I think, women have often been the backbone of agriculture, especially in Australia, and they haven't perhaps been on maybe the bank title, but they've been there on the balance sheet and in the kitchen and driving tractors and fixing fences and cooking and on local community committees. They've sort of been the backbone, and so it was really important to really showcase them as being an important part of agriculture, but especially because obviously the name is after George.
No, that's very clever, and women in ag definitely deserve some recognition. So I think it's really clever. The Dr. Ruby.
She is actually, the characters and the doctor part did actually come from a girlfriend of mine, Kath Kidman, who she works in viticulture, and she has her PhD, and she's actually married to a George, and who's George Kidman. And George Kidman, his personality traits he's a mixture of my husband's personality traits and George Kidman. So George, he's a bit of a larrikin and he loves sport, and so we weave sport sort of stories through the picture books as well. And he's everyone's mate. So yeah.
Everyone's mate. That's brilliant. Now, we're taking George overseas to educate and inspire American students now. I'd love to hear about what inspired you to make it over to Kansas City and Texas, I believe, your first bookstores that's available, and the story of kangaroo saving the crop. Tell us about the story, kangaroos, koalas, crocodiles, spiders, that's the American knowledge. So anything we can do with lots of crikeys in there, I've noticed, which is very clever.
Yeah, well, I've always sort of had this idea that I wanted to take George globally, and I just set my sights, I guess, on the US to start off with, and I've been having conversations over the last few years with different ag educators over there, and getting feedback on my latest books and videos. A few of our resources are already listed in the US Ag Literacy Curriculum Matrix, the videos, and we've got some virtual reality experiences as well. They're listed on there. But this latest book that I wrote, I wanted to introduce George to the US by writing a story about him going to the US. And so in this story, George heads over to the US to visit his cousin Laura. And when he arrives, they go check out her corn crop, and to their dismay, they find a fungus has gone through the corn crop. And they decide to map out the infected areas with GPS. And after they map out the infected areas, George said, "Crikey, Laura, I think it's in the shape of a kangaroo." And so they harvest out the infected areas, and it is in the shape of a kangaroo, and it's a maze. And so they end up opening up the farm to the community, and all the community come in and learn about the different facts about corn and its different uses. And they even get to sample some wheat lacoche, which is a Mexican specialty made from, it's like a fungused corn taco. But yeah, it's a bit of fun. So I sent that book over to the US Ag Literacy Organisation, and they've confirmed that it will be included in the curriculum matrix as soon as I launch the product properly available in the US, which should be in about 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Does George get to do an international trip?
Well, hopefully.
Okay, hopefully funded by Tourism Australia or the Export Development Grant or something. But, you're really taking an Australian cultural icon, and carrying the torch, so to speak, over to America. So, it's likely to have more of an impact than you realise.
Yeah, and so I'll be working from next month with the Ag Literacy Organisation to develop a co-branded curriculum resource, which investigates the similarities and differences between US and Australian agriculture. And then I'll also be converting all of our Australian curriculum aligned resources into the US curriculum as well. So kids over in the US will be able to learn about their own local food and fibres, but they'll be learning about it through Australian George and Ruby. And we have done that already in New Zealand. So New Zealand kids, Kiwi kids, are already learning about their local food and fibre, but through Australian George and Ruby as well.
Well, that's kind of cool. We actually had a guest on our show recently, Cassidy Johnson, who was a rancher in America, and we had a bit of a discussion about comparing the livestock business between the two, which was quite fascinating. So I guess trying to educate Australian listeners about farming in the States, and I guess you're, having a crack at the same with kids. Tell me, what do you think the biggest impact will be about the next generation just understanding a bit more about where their food comes from?
Well, I think they'll be able to make healthy food choices because they'll understand where food comes from. Hopefully it will encourage more kids to consider careers in agriculture because they'll see all of these, exciting, diverse ways that you can be involved, whether you're in a regional area or in a city location. And I think there'll be more support for the ag sector overall because people will be made more aware of what it means to grow the clean green food, especially that we're lucky to have here in Australia. So I think it's just support and hopefully encouraging kids to want to get involved in the sector.
In the industry. It's tricky. Kids growing up in the cities just don't have that knowledge or exposure as much as they probably should. And I must admit I'm a bit of a late bloomer to the industry, maybe a decade in now, and somewhat self-taught, having now travelled, to almost every farming region and, picked fresh fruit and mangoes and apples and crops. And it's very grounding. And I think it really makes you appreciate, one, the hard work that goes into it, having a look at profit and loss balance sheets and forecasts of farmers through good times and bad gives you a real appreciation, particularly third to sixth generation Aussie farmers. So the impact it has on communities and families and also just knowledge of, I guess, better choices, sustainability, and being able to have an impact on decision making in the future. So I guess with all that, without that knowledge, you're just putting something into your mouth. You don't realise where it comes from with no acknowledgement or appreciation. So, how do we get that education deeper into our system of all ages? And I think you've got to start somewhere, and you're starting right at the youth, which is brilliant. Do you have any aspirations to increase the age difference? I think George could educate people of all ages. We might need a grandpa George soon. Or George is probably a teenager almost now.
No, well, George is in his 30s. Oh, do you mean my George or
Well,
my George?
both. The original George and your George, and but there's a whole family of.
Well, my George is nearly turning 16, but George the farmer is in his 30s, and Ruby, his wife, and they've got 2 kids that appear in the books as well. So twins, Jack and Lucy. But yeah, the next stage, well, I guess I've got the baby board books through to the readers and then the picture story books. So it sort of is really birthed through to 10 years of age with the picture story books. And then with the videos, we do have uni. We've had uni students say that they've learnt things through our videos before, and parents always come back and tell us that they learn things. But in terms of book content, I also want to start writing middle grade literature as well. So just take that age range up slightly for how long, I guess, a child can be involved with George the farmer.
That's great. What about other countries? Have you had any interest from UK or parts of Europe, for example?
We've had some interest come out of Scotland to look at converting some of our resources. I've got all of our books and some toys and things over at an English school in Japan, which I'm actually visiting in May, which I'm really excited about. That will be fun. And I guess in terms of YouTube and social, we've got over 200,000 followers across our social channels, and the biggest hits we get are from Pakistan and India. Yeah, they're very passionate about farming. So I think there's a really big opportunity with George to take him and Ruby globally. But, I've got a very talented team behind me, but I'm pretty much a one-man band. So I used to be very impatient with trying to get everything done at once, but I've sort of found it actually has been working quite well just to grow organically with, and take my time with producing the content. But I am sort of at that stage now, I think, after 10 years that I think, okay, I've got to do the push now and really try and take it further. Well,
the good thing is, your episode on landline and the episodes you've produced, 3, 5, 10 years ago are all still very relevant today. So it's got, long shelf life with the content. I guess that's the beauty of being in the content business: create once and hopefully, share many, with a global influence. So it's kind of cool. Simone, I just really, just love your work and love the influence that you've had on the industry. The background you've got there kind of says it all. You're in a beautiful field with the cow, living the dream on the farm, and working with kids and education in a fun and informative way. So Simone, thank you so much for coming on our show. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I can't wait to hopefully meet George one day.
Oh, I'm sure he'd love to meet you. He does get around quite a bit, so you just have to look out on our website, georgethefarmer.com.au, and see if he's appearing at a show near you.
I'll buy a VIP pass, and I want to get a photo with George.
No worries.
All right. Thanks, Simone.
Thank you.